I think the main thing I've learned since we last talked was that Mitch McConnell keeps his seat.
That's right. Mitch McConnell is going to be a senator next year. The big question is he going to be the majority leader or the minority leader? And for that, we're going to have to wait a little bit longer.
Okay, so what are you looking at on that, Anna, as a practical matter? And do you have any sense of when we might get a sense, for example, of what's going on in Maine, what's going on in Georgia?
Yeah, so we just have a few votes counted in Maine. It looks like we're going to have to wait a little bit longer for that result. I'm looking at North Carolina right now, where Cal Cunningham has a pretty strong lead, although I think we've only got about 2/3 of the votes counted. So still have a ways to go in North Carolina. The two races that I think are going to be really interesting are the Georgia races. It looks like David Perdue, the incumbent Republican, is pretty comfortable right now with about 20% of the vote counted. The race that could be even more interesting in Georgia is that special election where Kelly Loeffler is the incumbent, of course, appointed by the governor and facing off against 19 other candidates, one of whom is Doug Collins, who claims to be the true conservative standard bearer on Team Trump in Georgia.
Well, when you talk about David Perdue, the incumbent Republican senator from Georgia, it's not just he's a Republican, but he is pretty closely embraced President Trump. He's allied himself with President Trump. He's, of course, a former businessman himself. He's the CEO of a Fortune 100 company.
Yeah, that's true. And he looked pretty comfortable going into this race. It wasn't one that I was expecting to watch so closely until he had kind of a disastrous debate against John Ossoff, his challenger, his Democratic challenger, and actually ended up canceling the last debate. So that made that race a little bit more interesting. But it looks like Perdue at this point is in a pretty comfortable spot. And the other race that we're watching in Georgia could go to a runoff that wouldn't be decided until January. So if it comes down to that race for control of the Senate, it could be months before we know who is going to have the Senate majority.
So to jump ahead of ourselves just a little bit here, Anna, what about in Iowa? Because at one point that was thought that might be a switch, but it seems to be more solidly in the red column at the moment.
Yeah, that's an interesting race between Joni Ernst, the incumbent Republican, and Teresa Greenfield, the Democrat. Both had kind of claims to be, speaking for the people of Iowa. There was an interesting virtual debate when they were asked about the price of corn and the price of soy. But it looks like Joni Ernst is going to be more comfortable than we expected her to be. She also put herself very firmly in President Trump's team, and she's also a member of Senate leadership. So she rose pretty quickly through the ranks of Senate Republicans. Part of the reason being, she is a female voice in the Republican conference, and they don't have very many of those. So definitely something that Republicans would be looking to expand in their Senate delegations.